the word chutzpah comes to mind for a couple of different reasons. I mean, the first is that, if a hurricane hits the small town, sitting after the fact and arguing that we should have built the house out of brick or stone or wood doesn't really matter. For a lot of different reasons, this was going to be an election that incumbents were going to have a very, very hard time holding on to in this country. And to then say, well, if we'd had a primary and, a knife fight between some unknown group of Democrats, one would have emerged who would have been a stronger candidate than Kamala Harris and somehow run a better campaign than what we just saw in that 107-day sprint where she raised $1 billion and ran an almost flawless campaign. It just wasn't enough to
Many people would disagree with that, but
well, it was
going 0 for 7 in the swing states means it's not very flawless.
Well, other than
going 0 for 7 and losing the popular vote, there are a few things in the way of flawless.
I don't think that speaks to the campaign. Like we were
discussing
before.
The American people
We were discussing before. In every developed nation, the incumbent party at the end of the pandemic has lost. They have lost bad. The Democrats here lost less badly than the ruling parties. Conservative, liberal, does not matter. Across the world, the convulsions caused by COVID, by inflation, by supply chain problems, people are angry, right? Often they are choosing nationalist candidates like Trump or like Meloni or like the National Front in France, which just barely lost, right? But often they're just picking someone who's going to get stuff done, right? I thought the best Trump slogan was the Trump will fix it slogan. People feel that society is broken. I don't think any Democrat could have possibly won this election.
Who's this person, Nancy Pelosi?
Right, who's the dream candidate?
Well, that's really the bigger point. I just want to play this because to your point, Errol, on the Pelosi of it all. I mean, this is Pelosi at two different junctures in her evolution on this question of whether President Biden should serve out a second term.
I hope he runs. I'm for him if he runs. And I know that the Democrats will fully embrace him. If he runs, it's over. It's up to the president to decide if he is going to run. We're all encouraging him to make that decision because time is running short. But he's beloved. He is respected. And people want him to make that decision, not me.
I mean, the former speaker is twisting herself into a pretzel. When Joe Biden dropped out, they said, oh, he's a statesman, he's beloved, he's doing this for the country, he's the greatest man in the world. And now that they've gotten their butts whooped, now they're blaming it on the guy who they were just saying several months ago
Didn't she say
was
he
the
should be on
greatest
Mount
guy in the
Rushmore
world.
president?
She did say that. But they're looking for someone and anyone to blame. And to your point, I think that's a valid point. This election was always going to be tough because of the economy. You look at all the net negatives for the Biden-Harris administration. I'm not certain there was this magical candidate out there who suddenly could have defeated Donald Trump. I just don't believe that.
I totally agree. And imagine a different postmortem from Nancy Pelosi where she says, you know what? We obviously totally disagree with 8,000 things that Donald Trump stands for, but we should have done a better job of hearing the pain of the American people. We should have taken it more seriously. We should have not stigmatized, the dumb Trump voters and all those MAGA people. We should have taken this more seriously, and we could do a better job moving forward because we, the Democrats, have solutions that might actually work. Instead, this finger pointing.
It was our messaging.
What the Democrats need to do is take a page from, believe it or not, from the GOP, who after 2 losses to Barack Obama went back and said, wait a minute, this isn't working.
Although, let's be clear, they threw out that autopsy.
They did. They literally did.
But they won. But they tried for 2 years. I was a part of that. We tried for 2 years.
You tried to figure it out.
We tried for 2 years.
Somehow or another, you figured something out. I'm not sure it was the plan, but there were voters did move. I just wrote about this for the Boston Globe, how there was a lot of economic frustration, particularly among, the sort of Democratic coalition is splintered at this point, right? And what Democrats cannot afford to do, especially in public, especially right now, is say, well, it's your fault, and it's your fault, and it's your fault. What they need to do is assess, and they need to start developing young leaders now. I honestly, when I heard that Biden was running again, I was shocked. I was like, wait a minute, where's the next, compared to the 2020 Democratic candidate, for president's slate, which was diverse and interesting and frankly all over the place, why are the Democrats refusing to really develop that next generation?
So I think that's actually a really interesting point, though, because Democrats went from a big change candidate, Barack Obama, and he changed the electorate of the Democrat Party in a way that fundamentally changed the electorate of the Republican Party, right? Yeah. We switched to low propensity voters. You guys switched to high propensity voters. And then you went back to Joe Biden. Then you went to Hillary Clinton. And they were like, no, Joe, sit aside. And then you went to Joe Biden. You went from this transformational winning, this candidate with Barack Obama, to much more of what people had already seen. And then Republicans walked in with a transformational change candidate who changed our electorate as well. That people wanted that change. And when Democrats decided to double down on more of what they had seen, the electorate said, okay, 2020, COVID's wild. And I think if Trump had just shown a little more empathy in that situation, this would have been a different outcome.
They also, I mean, if there was somebody out there, whether it's Gavin Newsom or somebody else, they should have announced themselves and fought their way.
Well,
waiting for Nancy Pelosi to
bless you is not how that was never going to happen 3 weeks before the DNC. But I actually think that the other reason that this Pelosi postmortem kind of misses something is that think about what happened in this election. Kamala Harris was held to her primary positions in 2019, positions that she took when she was running for the Democratic nomination. Democrats have a primary problem where they have to get a candidate out of a primary that can win a general election. Joe Biden came out of the primary because he did not do what all the other candidates did, which was run all the way to the left.
Yeah.
So they still have that problem. And it would not have been fixed this January, I don't think.
And yet, on the Republican side, that's sometimes not the case, right? Where Republicans run a more centrist candidate, Mitt Romney kind of candidates, they don't win, right? And so I'm not actually sure that it's the left-right axis that matters for Democrats winning or not winning in the general elections. I think it has to do much more with emotional, even, dare I say, spiritual qualities. And Trump has these in spades.
Maybe it's not left-right, but maybe it's not left-right, but maybe it is common sense, right? So it doesn't matter where on the spectrum of extremes you are, but if you're not sort of addressing people in the place where they are,
and they never did. They kept
that's
saying
going to be a problem.
They kept saying the economy was incredible. It was great. Look at how well the stock market is doing. 401ks, and average people say, well, wait a minute, I just went to the grocery store last week.
That's right.
And $200 really didn't get me very far. Or I went to the gas station and I don't have enough gas for the end of the week. I mean, these very real tangible things in people's individual economies, if you will, it seemed a bit detached from the messaging of the candidate and coming from her campaign writ large. And I think that was a terrible mistake.
And I think
let's be
Democrats
clear,
do this
though.
a lot,
President Trump is also, the optics of his campaign may have been this sort of populist messaging to I'll fix it, right? And we'll get that economy back on track. But frankly, that's a lot of hypocrisy, and it's not, it remains to be seen whether or not that's actually going to happen. Are there going to be policies that support the working class coalition and the voters, non-college educated voters and others who voted for him, right?
Yeah.
I think the Democrats were struggling to figure out who they were speaking to. Were they speaking to the middle class, which is, by the way, shrinking in this country? As we know, there are more people who are likely to be wealthy or poor than they are to be in the middle. So we've seen that 10% decrease in the middle class, and yet the messaging didn't seem to connect.
But they kept almost telling the American people from the podium, they're there, dum-dum, the economy's fine.
Right, what are you talking about?
What are you talking about? Everything's
well,
great,
things are
they're
doing.
there.
We're
And
recovering.
it was so patronizing. The American people, I was listening to NPR, I heard a woman in an interview say, going to the grocery store, chips feel like a luxury item. And you have Karine Jean-Pierre as the White House press secretary at the podium saying the economy is great, and it's just because the media isn't telling the American people. That's Democrats' biggest problem right now. If you are blaming the media for not carrying your message, welcome to being a Republican, buddy, because we have to fight back all the time against, how many times is it Republicans pounce, Republicans seize, Republicans this, that, or whatever? How about Republicans acknowledge the fact and make that a headline?
Let's just put one thing, though. Just because I think, just to be clear, I don't think we should over-index even on the economy as an explanation for what happened on Tuesday.
No, that's right.
There were a host of other things. And part of it is also, you look at what Republicans spent their money on. It wasn't just the economy. They were spending money on the trans ads, immigration.
Cultural issues.
Cultural issues. So there was another part, for Pelosi where she talks about this. She believes that's a big part of it.